Welcome back to the most professional StarCraft 2 with the greatest player of all time, the Zerg in the red, the finisher. It's Serral. Standing in his way, the Protoss in the blue demour. The wall. It's showtime. In a best of 7, Protoss versus Zerg showdown between the unstoppable force and the immovable object. And whether you're looking to see Serral dismantle yet another opponent, or if you're hoping the only wall broken today is the 4th one, it'd be awesome if you could smash that like button and maybe even subscribe. I haven't got to the algorithm. And Jimmy, what are we at? 1,669 likes on this video, on this cast, and I'll cast another one. And I'll probably do it anyways because I don't know what else I'd do with another. So hopefully you've had a nice day so far. And hopefully it's about to get just a little bit better. Is Serral forced into taking his 3rd base, or at least strongly encouraged by the very first probe? Already setting it up with some drones, and the probe comes back around to create even more problems early. Now, Zerg players have long since accepted that you're either going to proxy in their natural or take your 3rd, as Protoss players have made it that probe's life goal to delay things as much as possible and generally be infuriating. Now, Serral, we're not sure he has emotions. I assume they're there somewhere, but under such a cool and collected exterior, they're almost impossible to detect. Or he's just finished. Porque no los dos. But a Stargate is on the way for Showtime. We're on Persephone, which is not a incredible map for Zerg against Protoss, especially in the late game, because every base you take past that first 4 is going towards your opponent, making it a little easier for the Tempest and the Mothership to get closer. And now we might not get there. Serral might come up with some crazy all-in, but Showtime, well known for being able to he commits the Adepts to the shade. He will get in, but Serral with the Evo Chamber block. And, oh, the Adepts actually slipped through. And trapped in a prison of his own design, the Zerglings. Serral getting a little fancy there. Maybe a bit too much for his own good. Ends up losing 3 drones. A lot of Lings forced out. Showtime actually has an 8-worker lead. Not because he killed so many, but because he forced the Zerglings and delayed additional drones. That Oracle hanging out at the 3rd base, loitering, is how others would describe it. I'd describe it as stoically defending. But knowing that without the Adepts, he's not going to have any way to deal with these Zerglings, at least efficiently, without the Oracle. And a Phoenix! No, every once in a while they build a Phoenix, all right? It's a thing they can do. Yes, well, we'll remember you. I assume I'll bring up the units lost tab at some point. As the first... No, I was going to say the first unit lost, but that was also not true. The first Overlord lost will be the one that wanders into the natural. Some players will build a Void Ray, but Showtime well known for being as efficient as possible. Sometimes maybe a bit too much. But it's all about results. And recently he's had some of the best of any Protoss out there. A resurgence. A reconsolidation, a rebuilding of his game plan. Oh, he picks up the Queen and slips around with the Oracles. The old rug pull situation. And no crypto here, thankfully. But 4 drones dead. Serral still even, and he doesn't have any real advantages to show for it. That's the early game for Zerg, getting poked and prodded Oracles and Adepts, and well, it's mostly, and occasionally a Phoenix. But mostly just boxing out as much as possible, absorbing the hits. Some of you may die, but that's a sacrifice that Serral is forced to make. Dodges into a Spore, but it ends up costing Serral more. And yeah, at least according to the lore, the Spore Crawler is quite a chore. And Serral might be a little sore about that one, but lair is already completed. Relatively quick in the scheme of things. Roach Warren on the way. Serral just rolling with the damage. The Zerglings trying to come in. Already a Templar Arc. Is that a Spire? Gotta make sure it's real. Potentially Mutas? And hiding the Spire in plain sight, aka one of the least likely places to be scouted by the Oracles. But, well, that is certainly one way to change the paradigm here. To try to retake air control. Having a Spire is never a terrible idea, but they're usually better ones, is why it's not usually a priority. But it has not been scouted. Showtime, there's no reason to be looking... Well, usually you're working around the edges where the drones are. But the Oracles, slaps a revelation. Absolutely no knowledge of this. And unannounced mutas, the most effective and sometimes the only effective kind. But the Phoenix, the greatest counter to mutas in the game. Oh no. Especially before they even start. He spots the Spire. But now that's quite a quandary. The Spire is 90% done. So, does Serral build any mutas at all? There's already Phoenixes in production. Would Serral bluff? Yes, of course. It's just, it seems so inevitable that it doesn't even feel like a bluff, but wow. Immediate infestation pit. He's getting +1 air weapons, but Serral is swerving right before driving into the mutas, out of the way. And Showtime has already been forced into defense. He's got Storm done, very important. He's building more Phoenixes, which aren't bad, but they're certainly not the ideal counter to Mass Roach Hydra. Especially compared to dealing with Mutalisk. So, Serral turns that scouting information upside down. And it's not a fake, but it's also not a fake. So, while you're puzzling that one out, Showtime getting a 4th base, and this is why Showtime's sitting in his base. Usually when you get Storm finishing, you want to at least try to put on a little pressure. See if you can get something out there. Not always. Sometimes you just sit back and build up a fleet beacon, but the Phoenixes will zone out the Overseer. 2 more cannons on the way. A Zealot. Yes, my life for ire. Hello? I don't... Do you guys also charge a lot? I don't... But the Zealot will spot the base and the setup. Trying to... Yeah, I think you figured it out. Had a side eye there. But Serral's already comfortably got 4 bases. They've been shadow boxing each other. This map with the relatively limited lanes makes it very hard to commit to an all-out fight if you don't think you already have a technological advantage, which both players are trying to get. There is a fleet beacon on the way as Showtime heads straight for the Golden Armada. While he realizes at this point mutas are not an imminent threat, he knows that eventually he's going to have to deal with very likely lurkers. And speaking of, lurker range is already on the way. Lurkers in production. Serral nearly maxed out 84 drones and a 5th base. That is the key. Holding on to any bases but your first 4. It is very difficult to keep a grip on him here. And if Serral can do so, even for a little while, he can build up that sort of iron bank that economically strangulates his opponents. That was quite a sentence to navigate, but so is the late game in this matchup, so... Zerglings looking for an opportunity, but have literally no upgrades. Well, I guess besides speed, but stop being pedantic. I'm not surprised to see such a tense yet passive game. Passive, maybe not accurate, but... Well, it's hard not to call it that. With the grand total in 10 minutes being 7 Zealots. Literally 10 units for Showtime down. Obviously a few more from the Zerg, but in cost, not so much. Adrenal glands on the way. +1 melee. We've got Lurker burrow speed. At some point, this no-rush 10-minute game has got to give. This isn't big game hunters. Eventually, they will run out of resources and must compete. Well, there's one contested base. The gold base. Down the center of the map, on the opposite side, furthest away from the mains. Is that... Oh, Nidus Network is on the way. It will be spotted. Showtime? There's also a fight happening over to the bottom right corner. Storms wash over the roaches and hydras, but that spread, I can't believe it's not butter. Beautifully done. And Serral? Keeping Showtime at bay, but make no mistake. The biggest concern will be the biggest units. Alright, the Mothership, the Tempest. Aptly named, and Changeling sneaking across as well. The creep spread, kind of mediocre, but not a... It's important. It's important. But Serral clearly prioritizing getting the lurker count up. He only has 5 queens, so 1 for each hatchery. Kind of monogamous in that, but Still, we've had a few skirmishes. The mothership is out, will be revealed to the Overseer. The Nidus screams into existence like so many of us did at some point, but most, I hope, but the Lurker's over to the right side, but the stasis is in position. I don't think Serral notices. Or if he does, he's an absolute genius and can see it at the... Nope. Catches some of the roaches. Not exactly ideal, but the main... This is a bait and switch. All right, masterfully done. I can't believe Showtime fell for this. That's clearly not his main army. The Lurkers are moving through. They're already in position to catch the intercept. Actually, I feel like Serral not being as ambitious as he could. Playing it safe here, and the Lurkers attacking tactical Nidus in order to maybe escape from this situation. But Serral outmaneuvered the army and then gave Showtime too much credit. He thought Showtime would react much more quickly and effectively than he did. So he kind of squandered an opportunity to maybe get some more damage done. Serral is dealing with a 5-base Protoss. He's a 5-base Zerg right now. But I do think it's on the Zerg at this stage of the game to at least keep the Protoss under control. Force him to keep spending his Templar, his Storms, bottled up in his base. He's just building a greater Spire. The Phoenixes are scouting forward. A counterattack in the bottom right. But still, only superficial damage across the board. Serral's lost twice as many resources, but let's be honest here. It's barely anything so far. Showtime's only lost 50 gas, and it was those 2 Adepts like 10 minutes ago. But, well, Lurker burrows down, and the Zergling's on top of the base. Actually lightly defended. He broke through some of the cannons, the roaches, and Showtime has no units here to defend. This single Lurker being chastised by the Phoenixes. Meanwhile, the Archons, the deathball is rolling forward. Serral has quite a spore perimeter. A sporimeter, if you might. Now, as soon as I said it, I regretted it. The Corruptors knocked down the mothership, but he mass recalled into the main. But the Spore Crawlers anticipated this. They're going to take down some of the Tempest. Corruptors are out. Lurkers as well underneath. The Oracles are overhead to provide detection. But Lurkers in the main. A Nidus at a key time. Denies +1 armor. And some of the roaches are stuck out. Stasis keeping it together. Guts both upgrades. The Queen's forced to hold it together. Brenda, hold! I'm holding. Now heal me, Susan. What are you doing? And Serral manages to cut this fight into 3 or 4 different pieces. And, well, since Protoss don't have mouths, they found them all unappetizing. But Hydra's lunging forward, trying to take out that last Templar with Storm. But Showtime comes out of this fight, I think, at a severe disadvantage. He's down 30 supply. He actually lost more resources. He had the army. He just dove into the main directly on Serral's Lurker swords. They sliced right through the Archons. These Spore Crawlers softened up the Tempest and helped take down the mothership. Showtime leapt before he looked. And I think he broke at least a couple ankles on the way down. A Predator drone with that army. I don't know how many ankles they have. I assume more than 2 in this scenario. Nidus, but he's down, but he's certainly not out. Oh, those are changelings in the main. Okay. They show up as blue on the mini-map and continually distract me, at least. You guys were looking at the mini-map, right? Just lie. Another ship is on the way, but Showtime kind of flubbed that first attack. He dove towards the main. He telegraphed that play like it was 1880. And, well, Serral was very happy to receive. He built more spores in the main base than outside of the main base. He clearly expected that exact move. So Showtime's suffering from being too predictable so far. But Serral still has to deal with the deathball. He's got to whittle it down or find a decisive moment to pull it apart. There's a lot of options, but usually the first thing. More spawns crawling up. It's still a precarious situation for Serral. If he can continue denying the 5th base, eventually he can whittle down. He doesn't even have to be cost-effective, just be effective. Wow, the Overseer count. 11 of them. Nidus is just popping up everywhere. Over 10 of them now. I mean, they're not still all intact, but that's how many he's attempted. And I think just now Showtime realizing that he got his upgrades denied. if anything changes this game, the fact that Serral was able to shut down multiple upgrades and Showtime didn't realize for like 3 more minutes, and now he's building them in the same spot again. Well, the Zealots try to jump the Lurkers, but they'll get eviscerated if they stick around for too long. Zergling's trying to sneak in, actually trying to grab them between a rock and a hard place. And the Lurkers, well, Serral's filling in the upgrades. He's got +2 for most things across the board, working on +3 melee attack, as well as +3 ranged. Showtime is maxed out, but with almost nothing in the bank. Serral, with multiple Niduses in his own main. I like it, he's just throwing them out there, all right? The scream of terror continually across the map. It can be heard through the whole map. And Showtime has to be wondering exactly. Well, technically, if you're wearing headphones, it's directional, so you can get a good idea of where it's not based on your vision. But it's still very stressful, and it causes you to look around, check your bases, maybe check right outside, slows everything down, and, of course, this allows Serral to reposition almost as quickly as Showtime with his Protoss army. Picks up a couple of the Lurkers, knocks them out, still making use of those Phoenixes, which did survive to this point. Showtime's going to try the same thing again, trying to carve his way in towards the main base. Didn't go well last time, but this time he has tectonic destabilizers, and he's going to ooh, storms on the drones. Will cost him some of the Templar, though. He's threatening the main, but he's not committing to it. That's the important point here. The threat is almost more important than actually diving in. There's plenty of Corruptors in position. The Revelation will see the Lurkers he already knew were there, but it's just kind of a figure of speech. Tempest just popping the Spore Crawlers one by one. Tempest as well. Oh, the Lurkers as well. More storms on the drones. But 5 Infestors on the way. Burrow is completed. Neural Parasite. No. But this may actually be a scenario for Microbial Shroud. Showtime's got to be careful not to be maxed out. And yes, that's what we always say whenever you lose units. Like, I'm just making sure I'm not maxed. So that way he could actually warp in the main. If he's caught at 200 supply, he might not be able to warp in Zealots in time to deal with the Nidus in his base. That's the real risk here. Neural Parasite on the way. Proof that Serral is not perfect. It took him building the Infestors and then realizing they didn't have Neural Parasite to start. So that will slow down the potential defense. But the best counter to Tempest is Tempest. That's actually true, though. A Tempest has massive air units, have a great bonus against themselves, and they're relatively fragile. So if Serral can borrow half of them, well, the other half might not exist, which does a whole sort of fraction thing for a while, but those Tempests are all balled up. The Infestors are revealed just a little bit late, though. 8 Broodlords on the way. Showtime has reestablished his bases, and Serral doesn't have that overwhelming bank. The Storm softening up and wiping out the Overseers. +3 flyer attack on that not-so-fake Spire now. Serral has increment. You know, that Spire, he played both sides. If it didn't get scouted, he could have made Mutas. But instead, he's got incredible air upgrades. Not that Showtime's been slacking. He's at +3 in the air, +1 air armor. There are Lurkers. That is way too many Lurkers. Just cross-hatching the entire front of the base. Serral doesn't actually burrow, though. He's too busy. Not again! Deja vu. I've just been in this base before, losing Mothership, and wow, it's happening again. He has Neural Parasite as well, so the Broodlord's overhead. He may have to recall out Showtime. Throws out the Fungals, realizing that Neural Parasite won't be nearly as effective as just knocking out the army. And the recall is not to the base. Serral will kill way more than 2 birds with the Zerg equivalent of dozens of stones. The analogy fell apart before it even started, but still. Serral, I don't know what Showtime expected to accomplish. I think the Lurkers kind of... He's like, well, there's 15 Lurkers on this side of the map, so I should be able to get something done. He hadn't seen... Okay, so... This game is not played with the perfect vision that we have here as observers, as commenters, who know everything and every move that you should make, obviously. The most breathtaking, intelligent, genius viewers that like and subscribe to prove it. He didn't see the broods yet. The Lurkers are on this side of the map. If he doesn't know the broods are out, there's a good chance there's no anti-ground, and the recall can just rip through and the Tempests still have air superiority. Because the Broodlords showed up at that exact time, combined with the Infestors, meant the Templar could not wipe out the Corruptors reliably. And that meant the Tempest couldn't do their job of killing everything else. And that meant Serral is now ahead by 3,000 minerals and 3,000 gas in the bank. He's also taken the goal. The most important base on the map at this stage of the game. The 3 o'clock here. As the Phoenixes wander in, find a nice little sporchard out front. The Lurkers caught between 2 sets of rocks and speed zones. The Healing Shrine, actually the only way to heal your Protoss unit. I guess, well, and also it has an air blocker, so that's unfortunate. If it wasn't an air blocker like on Torches. But, not here to debate geography. Viper's out. Serral. A whole Hogwarts of spellcasters right now. And yes, I will call them spellcasters. What do you want me to call them? Ability users? I saw someone like, well, they're not spells, they're abilities. All right, Serral's got several ability users now with plenty of energy so they don't get tired when they're using their abilities. Are you happy? Nobody's happy now. All right? Another Nidus Worm at the back takes down the rocks. The Changelings providing vision. Showtime not paying attention. Finally sees it. But Serral has grabbed the key bases all over the map. +3 shields, +2 armor, and +3 air armor on the way for Showtime as he's trying to figure out what else to do. But Serral's got him again in that economic and almost literal chokehold. I would say he's starving, but I'm pretty sure that Protoss, like, are plants. And they, like, how do Protoss eat? I like to believe that Protoss are just very angry plants. That's why they like the sun and stuff. Don't think about it too much. That is solarite. Have you heard of solarite? Their whole magical metal is based on the sun. Anyways, what I'm trying to say is Protoss proven to be plants. I will take no questions, and I will not elaborate further. Thank you. I've had my chlorophyll of your bullshit. Showtime scrambling around. Gonna use the speed highway. That's a lot of Archons. But the blue balls of destruction might not be enough against a well-entrenched Serral. The double siege. He's got 10 Broodlords and 5 Lurkers. He's slowly but surely gone for air superiority. You can't neglect the ground. And at some point, it's always Infestor Broodlord. No matter how many... It's been 15 years of StarCraft to 15 years ago. Okay, maybe not 15 years, but like 14 years ago, you could definitely see Infestor Broodlord. People were doing like one base, like roaches for like 6 months, or Hydra drops, or stuff like that. So, we'll just ignore that time, but... Well, Showtime off to the right side. Serral building a bank. Every moment he's mining from this base. Grabs an Archon. Get over here. Get out of here. Look, the Overlord. One of only 2 in the unit's lost tab. Wow. 100 Zealots. 8 Tempest. 16 Archons. But also 33 Lurkers have died. But overall, the fact that Serral has been more cost-effective than a Deathball Protoss is obscene. Not entirely unexpected, but absolutely ridiculous. The Twilight Council, the Templar Archives vulnerable to the Nidus in the main. Showtime was maxed out. He made that critical mistake and didn't have anything to defend against it. And that means he's diving on the Lurkers down the front. Storms hitting the Zealots, a tsunami of splash damage from both sides. The Time Warps. Archons working around the right side, boxed out by the Broods. The Mothership abandoned and taken down. I'm not sure if it was recalling to itself or away, but either way, it won't be calling at all. Another ship is on the way, but Showtime is just getting smothered right now. Serral is dismantling the main. The Templar Archives is gone. The Twilight Council is gone, so we can't even restart it. There's a single Zealot holding the pylon gates here. Another Mothership is in production. But Serral is putting on a grand masterclass of late game Protoss versus Zerg. Showtime really thought he had the play. with the dive into the main. The recall to the mothership. But this isn't 2013 with Kiwikaki versus Stefano. There's no vortex. The mothership is not a plot device to get you out of trouble free against Serral. So, he really... And against... I've seen it work for him and other Protoss multiple times. I'm not going to say a lot of times. Most Zergs all in on this map. Because of that reason, mostly. But Serral... He just forced the issue. I think it all comes down to that. Serral's had the income lead for the last 10 minutes, the overwhelming majority, and for most of his career. The army size... Showtime's broke, and Serral is better off than ever. Have some well, maybe don't have some mercy, but... Showtime has to rebuild the Templar archives, which is never a good sign. So much knowledge lost. Knowledge. Legions of zealots. Whole cinematic warped in. Well, I was about to say, where did it go wrong? But unlike some games, there were two very clear points where it went very wrong for Showtime. The first one gave Serral an opening to get that economic lead. The second one solidified. Even then, Showtime had an opportunity, but Serral has not made a mistake. Serral has not done anything wrong. He's absolutely perfect all the time. As the investors decide to have a meet and greet. But here come changelings, broodlords, infestors, so many ability users. Oh, through all the fire. In fury. The finisher. Oh, this is a demoralizing first game. I mean... You can't afford mistakes. And even if you make no mistakes, it's still possible to fail. Well, it's not failure. That's Serral. But there were definitely mistakes made here. The storm's coating the field. But an entire Sporist has to be waded through. He's struggling for detection, but has the Oracle on the back line. So Serral has so little in his ground army. He's... Okay, wait a second. He has so little ground army. Yeah, he's just got 5 lurkers and a couple dozen lings. So Showtime wins that fight. The Queen's trying to pull it together. The Broodlord's moving forward, though. One of them gets obliterated, but there's so much more. Oh, Fungal Archon getting involved. Active Cloak. There's a couple Vipers in there, but he's grabbing some of the Tempest. The shield batteries doing everything they can, but with the Tempest working against their own. He's just taken out the Tempest. He has neuroparasited. Yeah, knocks him down. The Archon's helping out. The Storms across the entire front. But if they don't code everything, it might as well be nothing at all. The Time Warp slows the Broodlings, but he's all but abandoned this base. Showtime's kind of turning this into a base trade, which would be close if he had any money in the bank to trade with. But right now, Serral's holding all the cards. And Showtime's like, can you give me some cards so I can play too? And that's not that type of tournament. Unfortunately, Serral's stealing some of his. Not, just inevitable. Half an hour. Serral just calmly, never giving up much ground, but willing to bend a bit in order to rebuild. Did he lose his fleet beacon? There's zealots patrolling the main, looking like a campaign mission that you have to try to sneak your way through. Those, I never liked those. The, like, stealth missions. Come on. If I wanted to play a MOBA, alright, I'd go play Heroes of the Storm. Like, you mean Protoss versus Zerg? No! I mean, a little. Still the most fun MOBA. Let's be honest. Yes, there are more people probably playing it than playing SC2 Ladder, but that's not important. What is important... What is important? Well, Showtime has a few Templar, and he has a dream. He has one less observer, though, which is going to make that dream difficult to see. Now feeling a bit more like a nightmare. Serral holds down the Templar. Their fancy capes won't protect them as the Broodlings slam into them or chew them to pieces. The Zerglings overrun. GG! Serral with an absolutely dominant performance. Just completely dismantles Showtime, pulls them apart like a Laffy Taffy. More one-sided than a Mobius strip. Serral just showed us all how to do it. Very simply. All you have to do is spend 20 minutes, slowly but surely, preparing for every possible move they could make, anticipating it, being several steps ahead, and taking full advantage while they make said mistake. And you can jot that down while we open up game number 2. It always ends up at the Infestor Broodlord. There's simply no better way to exploit map control and an economic lead. At least not at this time. Lurkers are good, but obviously they don't deal with the Tempest. It's the Templar that are always the problem. The abundance of Storm can only really be dealt with by kind of outranging the Templar, and the Lurkers can't do that reliably because they have to burrow in the ground, which makes them very vulnerable to Tempests. I want to point out, notice how Tempests are the choice. Not just because they look cool, and I'd like to, you know what, I'd like to take this time to acknowledge a very interesting statement I saw. Yes, I'd like to use as much filler time as possible to argue with the YouTube comments, so like and subscribe. And maybe we can reference you next time. But somebody pointing out the Tempest, which has a big, massive energy plasma ball, has a shadow under it. And you might think, like, doesn't that big plasma ball, doesn't it generate a lot of light? Just as, like, extra radiation? Obviously not. Remember, Protoss are plants. Recall that. Which means we're on a planet that is filled with light. Massive, like, incredibly bright sun. And that means, even though the plasma ball might be bright, in comparison to the sky, it's still blocking a significant amount of the solar radiation. So therefore, that's why they have the shadow. And also, you think they were thinking of that when they came up with the Tempest attack. It also looks cool when it has a shadow, because then you can see it. Anyways, this game still looks amazing for one that hasn't had a graphical update since, like, closer to when Clem was born than today. So, StarCraft 2 came out in 2010. Yes. 6 years ago. And then the major graphical update was with Legacy of the Void. No. Heart of the Swarm, which is when we added all these fancy physics and ragdoll animations, and we were able to take advantage of the newest and greatest in technology. The Intel Core 2 Duo. I think it was more than that at the time, but I'm pretty sure the... Wait. Okay, early games EVP build. You already know this. You've seen this 500 times. It's more important. StarCraft 2 Wings of Liberty. Now playable on Windows XP with DirectX 9. They really only had like 3 DirectXs. Huh. It's also got the... This box has gone through a lot, alright? It's been a long time. 6 years. The little box. But minimum system requirements. Go back over here. Jimmy, just edit it in post. You mean not? 12 gigabytes of hard drive space, 1 gig of RAM, 1024 by 720 display resolution, a DVD-ROM drive. May have to explain that to your children. 128 megabyte GeForce 660, 6600 GT, and 2.6 gigahertz Pentium 4 processor, or equivalent AMD. Alright, I'm sorry. How's the back pain? Anyways, so here we are today. Coming up on the 15th birthday. Wait, no, 6. We agreed on that. Ranking up. Serral up 1-0. We're switching gears. Alright, we're back in the game. Like EA Sports. Oh, now I'm sad again. Moving on. The Oracles. Driven away. And as the prophecy foretold, one Oracle will be in the orange after killing 2 drones. The Queens will politely yet firmly ask them to leave. And for now, they'll oblige. At least until the shields come back, probably. +1 melee attack rush. Blink is on the way. A quick blink. Faster than the Forge. Usually they're alongside one another. Maybe looking for a bit of early aggression. Oracle trying to come in. Remember the fake Spire from earlier. I think Showtime's probably keeping that in the back of his mind. But I do think that kind of set the tone. The Spire existing and Showtime probably overreacting a bit to it. Encouraging him to stay in his base and eventually get dismantled by Serral. I don't think that was the decisive characteristic of the game, but just one of those very small yet incredibly effective things that Serral is so incredibly good at. Stasis catches some lanes. Blink. Not quite done. But Showtime is showing up so early. Serral hasn't yet had time for the melee attack upgrade. And with those oracles overhead, this actually gets a little bit complicated, as only the Queens can deal with them. And with Stasis at the back, he catches a few more lanes, has an opportunity to maybe blink forward indeed. Templar Archives in production, now another Spire. Muta's on the table yet again. Gonna take a while for them to actually show up though. Blinks back, Oracles light up. There's not that much energy. +1 melee is done. He's just gonna eat the Oracle hits and try to eat the Stalkers as well, chasing them down the Oracles. I think they're pretty much out of energy, so can't help. And Serral, with a vengeance, just biting at the ankles of the Stalkers all the way back home. He may have noticed they didn't have +1. He knew by the timing of the attack that this was unlikely to be like that upgrade sort of play. There's already Storm on the way, but this time around, Serral is banking gas. He's got 700 plus gas in the bank. It's gonna be Mutas. A gateway wall, which is great against Zerglings. Not so great against the Mutalisks. And get off my creep! Good job, Brenda. You got him. Don't be patronizing. Did you say Patreon, like the one in the description? Wow, what a shameless plug, Brenda. No, Sorry, I blacked out for a second. But Muta's flapping across the map. I think he caught a glimpse of the Spire or the Mutas themselves. Phoenix is already on the way, but Serral, with enough Mutas to be a threat, it takes 5 Muta attacks to one-shot probes. Comes in, Phoenix is already out. He knows he's been spotted. Gonna try to... If he actually starts taking down the Phoenixes, obviously that could be disastrous. You can't recall the Mutas, though. Serral's still going. Will he just commit? Oh, the Oracle! Fast enough. Yep, those are Mutas. Having a revelation on them is a huge deal, though. Let's be honest. It's a very important. Makes it a lot easier to deal with. +1 flyer attack. 18 Mutas. Yes, Phoenixes are good. Yes, Storm is great. But Serral, wow. He's got 4, 5 bases. That is a lot of Mutas. He's gonna just try to jump. Showtime. Well, the cannons are going to be no match. +1 flyer, no, that's more than enough mutas. Takes him down in 2 volleys. Just slipping and sliding on by. Deep powers a couple gates. There's no way he can blink outside the wall. Mr. Zergachev, tear it down. The Zerglings on top of everything. The cannons surrounded immediately. And again, Showtime beset on both sides. Serral does not have a follow-up. It's just more mutas. There's 4 Phoenixes, which are great, against 31 mutas, which is way, way brave. That is a murder of mutas, over half his army supply. Quite a muta risk. 1 or 2 2 storms could take them all out. But you have to actually land the storms. He's been incrementing out of 1 Stargate. He didn't think Serral would commit all the way, but Serral was prepared to go all the way. He's fighting the stalkers around the edges, abusing the fact that they have to have boots or little tippy toes on the ground and can't easily match the mutas in the sky. At some point, the mutas are also at 2 supply, pound for pound. Well, I guess maybe not pound for pound because they don't have they wouldn't be able to fly. Are just better than stalkers. There's way more damage. The stalkers are cheaper and maneuverable, and they come out a lot early. That's why they're usually a good, at least defensive option. But against this level of Mutalisk commitment, against like literally 40 mutas, the mutas will reign supreme, and they'll rain down destruction across the Protoss. Unless he flies into like 2 Archons. In which case, they will all evaporate. So. But Showtime is just falling apart here. I mean, he's done a great job. Like, he's getting him to storm his own probes. He could probably dive. He's just going to dive right on the Archon. The Zerglings helping to cover on the ground. The mutas easily knocking out the stalkers. Serral has an obscene amount of income. He has 2,000 gas a minute. All right, I would be selling off your oil futures here because Serral has cornered the market and he's gonna flood it. 11 more. This is obscene. I love it. This is altogether way too many mutas. Another gang of mutas. He's been splitting them. He's been bringing them back together. He's been doing the hokey pokey and shaking them all about. And, well, Showtime is... He's still here. He's got Phoenix range on the way, which would be helpful. He's got storms, which are... But Serral is just... Mutas over to the right side and mutas on the left. Showtime stuck in the middle. And an Ultralisk Cavern. The potential finisher move. The, honestly, you could probably build just mass drones and attack at this point. Showtime. He's killed 36 mutas. There's still 33 mutas on the field with more in production. I don't know if Showtime will live long enough to see the Ultras. But this is quite a dramatic death animation, as Showtime, I think, killed more probes than the mutas did. I lied. Serral killed all the probes before the storms could. 8 Corruptors on the way. I was wondering. Because you're not completely out of luck if they get a critical mass of ranged Phoenixes. Though it took the ranged Phoenixes for Serral finally to be driven back. And there is... Alright, there's a moment here. There's a moment. Where... Well, Serral is covering for that moment. As he has so many Zerglings on either side. But... The mutas have been shut down by the ranged Phoenixes. Oh, the Zerglings. The Zerglings are not enough. He has Adrenal Glands on the way. 5 Ultralisks in production. The jaws of Serral will clamp down. 2,000 gas a minute. That is... So, one base is about 250, roughly, per minute. That is... Or one gas geyser, rather. Sorry. No. That's wrong. I don't know how many base... How many hatcheries does he have? 6. That seems... Oh, we just killed one in the corner here. However many this is. Could just count 12 extractors. There you go. The Zealots streaming in, but the Ultras should be out. This is getting a little weird because Mutas are fragile creatures and Corruptors do not do damage against the ground, really. Technically, there's Caustic Spray. Showtime has taken out 2 bases, but the Ultras. Daddy's back in town. And he's more clunky to use than ever, but the Queen's trying to hold it together. Honestly, Showtime with a decent army against this. There's an Immortal, there's Archons, there's not remotely enough, though. If he had twice as much with an economy back home. But he doesn't, and he didn't, and he don't. Serral, 2-0. Wow. How many mutas? 61 mutas were harmed in the making of this game. 17 Phoenixes taken out before they could reach that critical mass. And Serral with another decisive victory. I don't know. Showtime has looked very strong this year. But I feel like Serral, once he locks in, like he zeroes in on exactly your weaknesses, and resistance is futile. Well, Serral flaps his way into another victory. Looks like we may be going home early. Metaphorically, of course. Serral really wants that hatch. Going for a 15 extractor trick hatch. No overlord, no extra drones. This is about as early as you can get a hatchery while still building any drones early. So he gets there very intentionally, building that hatch before the probe can come in. So I wonder if he has anything related to that, or he just was sick of getting his hatch blocked. Everyone's sick of getting their hatch blocked, but you have to weigh it against the opportunity cost. All right. Serral's 3 or 4 drones down from a usual hatch first, but he will have the hatchery. He even is dealing with the probe mineral flirting here, trying to delay the mining by convincing the mineral patches that they're spoken for, and then standing them up at the last second before it actually finishes mining. Widely considered to be a dick move, but that's a probe, so pretty much his entire repertoire. Spawning pool. Showtime has been here for most of the game now. 2 queens. I'm very much wondering if Serral has something. It feels like a clearly conspicuous move to go for that hatch after not bothering. It's a little map dependent, I guess. Well, we'll see. Serral's pulled out a slightly, well, just built. It appears that Showtime's Achilles heel is having a spire. Whether or not you use it, it doesn't matter. The spire, the one building that Zergs have been discouraged from using since the Stargate meta became a regular thing, which is pretty much when Glaive to Depths were nerfed enough that they weren't every game. So like 6 years, which would put us in 2010 again, but... Hello? Hey, this is a... Hello, I'm Brenda from the Hatchery Owners Association, the HOA, and you can't be here, all right? Protoss, we don't like your kind around these parts. Brenda, stop! You can't say that. I mean, they say that. No, they don't, Brenda. They don't have mouths. They literally can't. Yeah, but they're thinking it. Well, that may very well be true. But still... Sorry, I am. 2 adepts for 1 drone does not seem like a great trade. Why don't remove. The Zergling is coming across even before. It's getting worse. It's not getting better, it's getting worse. This pylon on pylon may be canceled before it even finishes. I don't think he'll take out the Nexus, the Oracle's energy recharged, but he may even scratch the hull a bit. No, not quite. He's gonna force him to light up the Oracle, which costs 25 energy just to turn the thing on. So, not exactly a big impact, but Serral, for the cost of 1 brave Zergling, removes a little bit more utility from the Oracle. So, something. It is not going Showtime's way here. He's having a doozy of a day. Thing is, like, he's not even playing badly. Like, the mothership recalls into the main on Persephone. Yeah, okay. Maybe not ideal, but perfectly acceptable moves to make. Definitely a play that works more often than not. Dealing with the mutas with just a few phoenixes. Who goes mass muta? It's 2025. How many times do we have to keep establishing what the year and date is? Until I can remember, which is increasingly more difficult. But a Bane... Is this a Bane bust? In the year of our Lord? No, wait, you mean Flash retired? Oh. Serral again? Is he anticipating? He's maybe thinking it's Glaive to Depths. Usually Banelings, that's what they're reserved for. But... And maybe Showtime's selling him with several more Adepts. 28 Zerglings in production. Templar Archive's on the way. But... yeah, Showtime's still just pumping out probes. He's got blank, he's got +1 in production. Serral canceled some Banelings. Serral was convinced that this was Glaive to Depths, I think. Or at least thought it was a high probability. But now he's decided to turn the tables as DJ Serral. Gonna be going right through the front door. And hopefully dropping into the base. The Oracle's driven away. And there's a probe queued up over here that may give a few seconds of advance warning. But that is not enough. He recalls to the natural, just completely abandoning over 20 probes at the 3rd. Oh, it's a massacre. Serral just ransacking the base. And he's making sure everything's held in. They're Banelings. He's on move command to maximize their use. Get as much out of them as possible. The Nexus... oh my... ah!
He's dead, Jim.
I think, I've consulted. I've yikes. Oh no. It's a disaster for Showtime. It was never together, but it's continuing to come apart. Serral in peak form, which is... it looks impossible. Like, this is not even... this is smurfing. How are you smurfing? Showtime is like... maybe right now 14 or 15 at the lowest. Maybe, okay, maybe a little more. But there are... Serral couldn't even count the players between him and Showtime on his fingers and toes. Maybe he has more fingers as well, but that wouldn't actually stop anything, to be clear. In case you didn't understand how fingers and toes... moving on. More toes on my Dronely fans with Patreon. Like and subscribe. Moving... I don't know. Leave some for the rest of us, so. It feels like it's getting to him now. It's just not coming together at all. Game 1, close, but couldn't keep up. Game 2, held with him, but eventually it more quickly got smothered. Game 3 was just a total disaster piece. And match point, well, only has to win 4 in a row against Serral. I'm not a betting man. Not a big fan of this wall off style, but you can wall off with the... So the reason to put the pylon in the wall is to make sure you have the wall with the cyber core. Because you can jam a little zealot in there. Because Protoss never invented doors. I guess a society that's always thinking what all of the others are thinking all the time. Doesn't really care about privacy too much. Which could never backfire in any way. And somehow makes them different than the Zerg, but also... Moving on. But later on, you can add a gateway out in front and have a much tighter wall off, which I think is an okay compromise. I don't love it. I don't hate it as much as some other setups that I've seen in the past. So if Serral was doing a pool first of some kind, early Zerglings, even sometimes roach all-ins, it might be helpful, but generally just a little safer, especially if you're going to send that first probe across the map. Adept. I always think I feel like it's almost the same meta as Terrans with their Hellions running by or committing with the Adepts. So many Protoss players just going for it, just sending it in, kill 2-3 drones. It's like, are they worth that little to you? Adepts don't age well. Usually not at all, but they just aren't very good. Yeah, here we go. And, well, he gets 1, 2. I think 3 is kind of worth. 4 would definitely be worth it, but... The Zerg can't do much about it. You will get some kills. It's just a question of at what cost. And so the cost is having to leave your Oracle back at home as well. Besides the Adepts, you must keep the Oracle at home, otherwise the Zerglings will cancel your... The Zerglings would definitely go for it without the Oracle overhead. The threat of the Oracle is important here. But, and Serral again, only 32 drones, 31. He's building some more now, but he's actually been, I'm not going to say baited, because that would imply he didn't want to do this, but has decided to build another clutch of Zerglings. And back at home, well, gonna try to exploit exactly this. Showtime turns around, you can see it coming back. Curse your sudden but inevitable betrayal. Like, the most obvious yet relatively rare play. The Oracles all come back. Lights up 1, burns its energy. 3 Oracles and nowhere to go. Literally 1 Adept in the door. What is your purpose? You are a door. Oh my Tassadar. So once again, grabs control of the game. With just a couple dozens, not even a couple dozen Zerglings. Like 18. Twilight, +1 on the way. +1 melee for Serral already on the way. Oracles! Not being rhetorical. As was written in the Loracle. A deplorical build! The stasis, well, the spore crawlers take it out, burns through their queens. And Serral, underestimating the level of commitment as the queens are forced to scramble and defend. Showtime not investing in any oracles. One more gets taken down. And, well, the element of surprise was good, but it feels like Showtime overstayed his welcome a bit here. The queens have adapted. 3 more drones dead. Serral's at 80 drone. What the What? That's disgusting. I have no... What? Where? How? Why? I can figure out when. That one I got. All this happened, and suddenly Serral's at 87 drones. This is just... Somebody check him. He must have had like 12 drones in his pocket when he came into this game. I have no... What? Oh, no, he loses 4. He plummets to a 13-worker lead with 4 bases and a 5th on the way. The Oracles have done nothing but keep Serral... Like, they've distracted Showtime so that Serral, while feigning weakness, has just the absolute booming economy in every sense of the word. That is an obscene... Some Zerg players never get to that drone count in this matchup. They're too busy putting out fires and knocking down blink stalkers and trying to deal with storm. Serral did a Zergling timing, took damage by the Oracles, lost some drones to Adepts, and is sitting at 85 with a lair done, Hydra and Bane speed on the way, and 5 bases at 8 minutes. I don't know how you deal with this. What? You need to bottle this brand of Zerg and sell it to probably Koreans, but like, especially now that Dark is... I can't stress how this is not... I try to give you my own slightly awkward, weirdly phrased, well, I like to say uniquely phrased, take on the games. Okay, a different flavor of commentary. Not to get overly dramatic or hype things up. Rarely does looking at numbers on the screen, though when you boil it down, technically the whole game is that. But don't be pedantic, nerd. I cannot stress how much 80 drones at 6.5 minutes with how this game started is ridiculous. That is... It truly feels like he has like a resource bonus or something. I don't... That would be impressive with no opponent. Not nearly as much so, but it's hard to do with no opponent. Yet here we are. The Hydras, the Lings, the Banes, the Storm's gonna try to ward them away. But more of a warning shot than anything to actually stop them. The Banelings rolling through, well spread, minimizing the damage. The Hydra's still waiting through the Storms, barely scratching them as they easily take down the spread units here. And more Banelings rolling through. The Oracle standing by, and 2 Gs hit the chat. Serral with a clean and utterly dominant sweep. Like a sexy janitor here. As Serral just completely destroys Showtime. Almost no redeeming. Showtime played well. Serral played an order of magnitude better. That was impossible. And that brings us to our anti-spoiler bonus game. Yeah, you thought Showtime would come back. The Storms would be enough. There'd be that one game you can be like, yeah, but still Protoss is in. But no. No. Instead, we've seen the best of us. Literally, the absolute best of us. It's now time to enjoy the rest of us. Welcome back to Bronze League Heroes. Let me introduce our heroes with a Forge in production back at home. A Forge in production back at home. We have Cognitoid, joined by his teammate Quadro. A Cannon Rush and a Proxy Rax right down the middle. Up against Wild and Prince of Ping, which is a pretty great name as well. Hello? Sir? I'm here to talk to you about your cannon insurance. Yep, that's a ping comes out. The Prince of Ping. Is he paying attention to it? He can just build the command center somewhere else. That is an option. This is a hard wall, so Wild can't get in. The cannons working their way up, but there's a hard wall on the high ground. The SCV kind of accidentally blocks the base. But now there's one cannon on the low ground, which is a mild inconvenience. 2 or 3 cannons is a significantly greater one. Wild is attacking the only building that can actually get repaired. Nobody has an orbital command despite multiple barracks being done. Those cannons are on the way. I thought this was an overlord. No, it's a barracks. And he's... Oh, wow. The coordination! Using the barracks. Oh, sir, go. Like 2 more inches. Or centimeters. Whatever. Giving the vision to break down the wall. Now, there's no follow-up. I guess besides maybe trying to get the cannons inside, but I'm not entirely sure what his end goal is there. I mean, the barracks existing. Quadra over here with room temperature. Well, not even that. We got lukewarm APMs. All these players combined amounting to approximately 1/2 of a Serral so far. Also an IQ. But another pylon on the way on the high ground. This pylon's actually going to depower Warp Gate and 3 gates. Wild will realize that, but there will be a bit of downtime here as the cannon's doing a surprising amount of work. Wild with a counter pylon. There's... Oh yeah, who proxies a tank? This is actually quite a coordinated cheese here. The tank adding it on. I had not considered teammates. All right, someone to blame, someone to lean on. But with the barracks lord here, providing... Stalker gets obliterated. The cannons still chipping their way through. And it's time to transition into a macro... What is this? A robo and gateway proxy by Wild, who may end up losing his cyber core. Prince of Ping has not managed to do much more than build a factory of his own, which is a bit on the late side considering his opponents have 2 factories with multiple siege tanks currently shelling the high ground here. So, probably could have been faster, but this ain't no Serral versus Showtime. Not anymore. We're in the real leagues here. The leagues of legends. Or whatever this is. Yeah, can still see it with the siege tank. There's the robo on the other side. But, he's gonna get into more. Oh, he lost his cyber core. Which is highly unfortunate. Siege tanks and Vikings. Quadro, everybody knows it's completely and utterly illegal. And, the United Nations will come to your house and personally chastise you if you go over 16. All right, everybody knows that. Because it turns red, and red is bad. Except when it's your team color. But I've always thought that it should be, because up until 24, it's actually still better to mine instead of long-distance mine. I've always thought it should turn yellow and then red, because you're still getting more efficiency. But it turns red, which is bad. Wild doesn't care. He's wild. They can't... Wow, that's a pylon. But he has no high ground vision. Where's the barracks lord? They might be able to actually start dealing with this. And there's a... Oh, a scan. Wait, that's Prince of Ping scan, which is not helpful. The Viking comes over and the Stalkers get absolutely obliterated. Wild is just casually building the rest of his base over here. Or, well, it may end up being his only base at this rate. He's been down this road before, it seems. Prince of Ping, with that +1 infantry weapons for his several unupgraded Marines. Well, I guess they'll be upgraded. Wait, is Wild controlling them? Now that's wild. It has the unit border They're sharing control. And this is what we ended up with? Interesting. Meanwhile, the Vikings hit the deck. Actually remarkably good against probes. We're gonna do a couple push-ups here. Probes on the run. Does he recall? Recall? The Marines will fight. The probes. He's gonna target. Actually, no. Well. Alright, the Vikings run away. That Immortal is not stuck, it's just cozy. Right? That probe feeling extra cozy now, if you know what I mean. I don't. You can fill in the blank. Recalls to his nexus to the south. Wild showing some semblance of life here. Meanwhile, the Terrans with their standoff. And now, make your guesses. Is it going to be Stargate for Void Rays or Dark Templar? From Cognitoid, our intellectual powerhouse with 12 supply. I don't think he's built a probe. I think he may actually be AFK. But from Quadro, of course, there's a fusion core. And another starport on the way. Wait, no, those starports are... No, Prince of Ping is making starports. Okay, pretty sure Cognitoid is just AFK. Oh no, he's mining gas. So make your bets. He's gonna have enough gas to make some mistakes soon. Prince of Ping has plenty of resources. What's it gonna be? All roads, especially in Bronze League Heroes, lead down a path into the sky. A sky path. Battlecruisers. So far, only one player has partaken, but the Immortals and Stalkers, the boys are pulled. Vikings, actually quite a good defense. The cannons helping out back at home. And they're breaking into the buildings. The Immortals are blasting through the Vikings. The SCVs are making their objections known through sacrificing themselves. +2 infantry weapons and +2 mech weapons on the way for Prince of Ping, making sure his 7 units have the best upgrades they possibly can. The Immortals are breaking through, though. You need a tech lab for battle cruisers, but 5 Vikings at a time from Quadro, scattered throughout the map. More SCVs pulled, all the way up to the high ground. The contain is still containing, such as it is. He's gonna try to hold the high ground with the SCVs. Vikings as well. There's some more. Wow, 5 Vikings coming across a whole raiding party. But the target fire, the SCVs are on auto repair, which means they don't draw aggro and the Vikings simply get obliterated. There's still some damage being done. Cognitoid is also technically not AFK, I think. But effectively, yes. So auto repair is really not helping here. The siege tanks are battling it out as the Terrans rub both of their brain cells together, and the Protoss will add a third. Immortal cut off. The SCVs. The starports left to burn. The SCVs will repair them. The Vikings, really actually a pretty good counter here. If only the SCVs would get involved. Here come some zealots. Well, LOL. Wild. That's a yellow card right there. The SCVs will eventually die. Quadro, with only 2,300 minerals in the bank, is going to have a tough time explaining this gap in his resume. Cognitoid, up to 16 supply, which is a career high for him. The Terran has taken flight, as is customary. Prince of Ping is, we lost him. Cognitoid has not rebuilt his base and is being revealed as we go into the time warp. So, Quadro still had enough for more siege tanks. I believe, well, Prince of Ping is still, I can't tell if he's here. Yeah, he's here. Let's go to the Prince of Ping action cam. This is at 2 times speed, just for our own sanity here. While gonna throw out a little bit of trash talk. Or unfortunately got outflanked. Is he zoomed in? A little bit. The siege tank. Unfortunately, that may be far too many, but well, okay, wait a second. Base trade indeed. Quadro will be mining again. Unfortunately, Wild is at 150 supply. So I have my suspicions as to who sent this one in to winterreplays@gmail.com. But, Quadro actually with the most APM here. Really making sure this push came together. And then not going much further from there. No battle cruisers grace the map with their presence. Prince of Ping lifted his command center, though we're not sure why. Wild has reestablished everything. Almost everyone else is at 0 APM. So Cognitoid is somehow at 200, which I'm not understanding. But he's apparently still in the game. Which, you know, seems about right. The probes... I think Quadro may no longer be in the game, and it's Cognitoid refusing to leave. Yeah, he's pinging. Is he really going to float to the corner? In my opinion, this is giving the other team a victory lap. Though, in some twisted portion of a 74 APM mind, or 27, depending on which one it is, it may feel like wasting everyone's... Well, all the way... Wow, it just keeps going. The map... We're at double speed, by the way. Why? Mad. Unfortunately, a little bit slow on the question, but we'll eventually... So I want to point out, it is our cannon rushing player, Cognitoid, who is currently making sure the game continues. Until this moment. So, maybe not the most dramatic ending, but certainly one of the games of all time. You thought Showtime would turn it around, but this is what reality looks like. It looks like Serral 4-0. It looks like this wild experience, this cannon rush, this proxy, this StarCraft 2. So hopefully, any part of it made your day just a little bit better. I want to thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. And if you got the means of motivation, be awesome to check out Patreon, YouTube membership, but I hear liking and subscribing is still free, at least for now. So thank you to our Mule Tier patrons bringing in those extra minerals, Big Jiggy, Devin Dor, Kate, Mario, Random Guy, and Sue. And otherwise, thank you for watching. I hope I made your day a little bit better. I'll see you next time. Good luck, have fun, stay chill.